Uncle Terry gave us the best gift imaginable this week by adding Matt Judon and Justin Simmons.
You are Locked On Falcons, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, everyone, to another illustrious episode of the Locked On Falcons podcast, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL. You'll get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. And if you don't know me, I'm your very humble host, Aaron Freeman, aka Mr. Drew, aka Sirius Black, aka Mr. AKA, and I've been covering the Atlanta Falcons for nearly 2 decades, formerly at FalcFans.com, RIP, still going strong in this illustrious podcast, and I thank each and every one of you that go strong with me each and every day. Shout out to the everydayers that make this illustrious podcast their first listen each and every day. And to become an illustrious everydayer, all you have to do is subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. So later on today's episode, Dalton Wasserman of PFF, the co-host of the PFF College Football Show, will be joining us, talk a little bit about the Matt Judon trade, the upcoming 2025 Edge class, as well as the upcoming college football season. And of course, Jarvis Davis of Locked On Sports Atlanta will finish up our conversation that we had yesterday, talking about who we're going to be watching Saturday against the Ravens in this week 2 preseason action. But this weekend is a great weekend, not only for Falcons football, but my niece is turning 9 years old this weekend. And I've decided I'm going to be a weird uncle. All right. I'm going to be that uncle that gives her weird gifts. Some years she might love the gift, and other years she'll be like, what is happening? What is this? I don't understand this. And in my mind, it's all part of a long strategy. I'm playing the long game, where over the next several years, right, it will lower her expectations to the point that, maybe she'll turn 16, 17, and maybe by then I'll have the means to buy herself a car. I need to get myself a new car first, but maybe I'll have the means to buy her a car. And then she'll be like, oh, I love you, uncle. You're the greatest uncle of all time. And it's like, yes, you thought I was going to give you something weird this year for your 16th or 17th birthday. And, I bring this up because it goes back to a conversation I had on yesterday's show with Jarvis Davis, where I wonder if the moves for Matt Judon and Justin Simmons happen if there are no injuries to DeMarco Hellams and Braylon Trice. And I'm sure many people would argue, hey, these moves were inevitable. And it's like, all right, I'm a little skeptical, but, it is what it is. But, it's hard for me to buy that, hey, the Falcons, they lost 2 role players and they added 2 Pro Bowlers. And it's an interesting strategy. But, I feel like it's kind of like being that bad uncle for my niece, right? And it's like having the original birthday gift that I was going to give her was a coffee mug. And she's like, I don't even drink coffee. It's like, well, you can use it for other things. But in the process of wrapping that coffee mug for my niece, I wind up breaking the coffee mug, right? And instead, I'm like, well, I got to buy her something else because I broke the coffee mug. Let me get her a pony, right? And I don't even know if my niece is a pony guy. That's why I'm a bad uncle. But, whatever it is, I get her a gift that she wanted all along. And I sit there and pretend like, yes, this was my plan the entire time. I was going to get you a pony this entire time and pay no attention to the broken shards of that coffee mug in the trash can. And so in this case, if you're not following what I'm putting down, the Atlanta Falcons fans, we, you, me, all of us are my niece. And in this case, Terry Fontenot is that bad uncle that got us a pony, right? By adding Matt Judon and Justin Simmons, right? And what these 2 moves have really done so significantly is they have raised the floor for this Falcons defense heading into this 2024 season. Everybody wonders, what's the ceiling and what can they be? Can they be top 10? It's like I always say, we will worry about the ceiling later, right? We'll be concerned about what this team's ceiling is once they, sort of establish what their floor is. And, we'll worry about the ceiling in December and January, right? Same thing with draft picks. Like we'll worry about a player ceiling 3 to 5 years from now. Right now, we need to be more concerned with the floor because that's they're going to be able to provide right now. And these moves raise the floor for the Falcons to be able to stop teams now, right? That before these moves were made, I was like, I think we got a chance to beat the Steelers. It's not going to be easy, but we can beat the Steelers in week 1. But I don't really think we have a chance against the Eagles and Chiefs. And then you have 3 divisional games, and like maybe you go 2-1 in those 3 divisional games. And so to me, like the best case scenario, and I know many will disagree with this, but the best case scenario for the start this year was like 3-3, in my opinion, for the Falcons. But to me, it was just as plausible that they would start 1-5 this year. And it goes back to something I talked about last week, where the sort of collective amnesia that people have when it comes to preseason. They get excited about preseason, then they're like, oh, then they watch 15 minutes of a preseason game and like, oh yeah, preseason football is bad football, right? And it's the collective amnesia that people get, fans, media get about teams. It's a recency bias, right? They forget about all the years before. They just focus on what happened last year, right? You think all the Falcons' problems stem from Arthur Smith and Desmond Ridder, and we solved all those problems because we hired Raheem, we signed Kirk Cousins, we drafted Michael Penix. But you forget about all the other lessons that you learned in the previous years that you've been a Falcon fan, right? You forget that in 2022, we talked on this very podcast about if you don't have a pass rush, there's a certain caliber of quarterback that you have no chance of stopping. Right? In 2022, that was Tom Brady. That was Matt Stafford. That was Joe Burrow. This year, that's Jalen Hurts. That's Patrick Mahomes. That's Justin Herbert. That's Dak Prescott. You forget about the fact that for 15 years, Drew Brees and the Saints dominated the Falcons matchup. Why? Because the Falcons couldn't get pressure on the quarterback. You forget the lesson that you learned 10 years ago in 2014 when the Falcons were coming off that huge win against Tampa Bay on Thursday Night Football, and they were playing the Vikings the next week, and everybody was like, oh, we'll roll. It's Teddy Bridgewater. He's a rookie quarterback. We got Matt Ryan. And you forgot, right? And I shocked everybody that week back in the day by picking the Vikings to win. People are like, what are you doing? Because, guys, it's not Matt Ryan versus Teddy Bridgewater. It's Matt Ryan versus Mike Zimmer in a very good Vikings defense, and Teddy Bridgewater versus Mike Nolan in a very bad Falcons defense. Just like this year, it's not Kirk Cousins versus Russell Wilson or Justin Fields, or Kirk versus Derek Carr, or Kirk versus Baker Mayfield. You can feel great all you want about Kirk going up against those quarterbacks, but Kirk has to go up against a top 10 Steelers defense, a top 15 Eagles defense, a top 5 Chiefs defense, a top 12 Saints defense, a top 15 Bucks defense. What's Baker Mayfield got to go up with it? What's Derek Carr got to go up with it, right? Who's going to have an easier chance? Whoever's the Steelers quarterback, who's going to have an easier chance to win that game? The opposing quarterback going up against our defense versus Kirk Cousins going up against their defense. That's why, to me, the whole we're a quarterback away mentality is so tired. It's so short-sighted because people basically just realize, oh, well, the last 2 years, the Falcons' problem has been the quarterback. Okay. But you remember the 4 previous years, the Falcons missed the playoffs and they had a quarterback. They had Matt Ryan. They had tremendous skilled players, right? That's why I tell you at the beginning of every episode, or almost the beginning of every episode, I've been covering this team for nearly 2 decades, formerly at FalcFans.com, RIP, because I have the knowledge of 2 decades of football watching, of watching the Falcons and learning the lessons and the knowledge and experience, all of that inform everything we talk about on this podcast. So I'm not sitting here to say this to dog the current players, but, you know, Kirk Cousins, Drake London, they ain't special. I've seen Matt Ryan. I've seen Julio Jones. I've seen Roddy White, Tony Gonzalez, Michael Turner, etc. Tyson Clabo, right? You know, but you know what is special? I've never seen Grady Jarrett have 2 guys like David Onyemata and Matt Judon lined up next to him. I've never seen Jesse Bates have a guy like Justin Simmons lined up to him. And so to me, now all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is interesting. This is special. This, you know, I'm gonna admit something to you guys. This is the first time since March I'm actually looking forward to the upcoming Falcon season. So I say to Uncle Terry, thank you, sir. And I will not be paying any attention to that broken mug in the trash can because I'm on a horse. Okay. So happy birthday to all of us. Happy birthday to my niece. It's been a great week. And on that note, let's talk about some bad football because we got a preseason game. We'll be joined by Jarvis Davis of Locked On Sports Atlanta to finish the conversation we had on yesterday's episode and talk about which players he is excited and interested in seeing in Saturday's action against the Baltimore Ravens. But guys, now that summertime is here, you know, it's time to figure out what you're going to do with your day. And maybe you want to get back in the ballpark. Maybe you want to get ready and geared up for these upcoming preseason action, or maybe you want to find that perfect seat at Mercedes-Benz Stadium week 1, September 8th, so that you can watch Kirk Cousins and the boys, Dirty Mike and the boys, go to work against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And all you got to do is download Game Time. They're going to take the guesswork out of buying tickets, right? And you can line up that perfect seat view. That's why we love Game Time. The panoramic seat views. It's incredible, right? You know exactly what you're going to get before you get there, right? And it doesn't matter whether you're looking for sports tickets or you're just looking for comedy, music, theater, whatever event is near you, Game Time is taking the guesswork out of buying tickets. All you have to do is download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL, and you'll get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So, wrapping up today's Locked On Falcons here with Jarvis Davis. We do have a preseason game coming up on Saturday at noon kickoff Eastern time against the Baltimore Ravens. Jarvis, what are you looking for in this game? Who are you looking at in this game? You know, who are going to be those people that we're talking about Saturday afternoon on the postcast?
You know, since we've dedicated most of this show, I'm talking about pass rush and defensive guys and figuring out what we're going to nickname the defense once they start balling out of control in the first month of the season.
Okay.
I'm going to start on the offensive side of the ball. And one guy that I've been impressed with ever since rookie minicamp is Casey Washington. I want to see if we can have a repeat performance that he had, because he seemed to be the go-to guy for Michael Penix last week against the Miami Dolphins. So, and I want to see if he can play his way into, because this is the beauty of preseason. I know how you feel about preseason, but for me, I'll never forget back when, oh man, I can't remember the year, the early 2000s, mid 2000s, Victor Cruz, when he was just absolutely going off in the preseason and nobody heard about him. Nobody never even thought about a Victor Cruz and where he played ball at, and none of that. And man, that dude came on the scene and just absolutely took over. Now, obviously, that's an extreme example, but I feel like there's always room for that type of, coming out party, right, so to speak. So I'm looking, not necessarily the case of Washington come up here and go 3 for 189. Like, I'm not talking about that, but if he can just give me another consistent performance, that'd be one of the nice stories of training camp, because nobody was checking for Casey Washington when the Falcons took it. They're like, why y'all taking a wide receiver that late? Whatever. But if he can figure out a way to move himself up that depth chart to be one of those guys that Kirk Oak be throwing the football to, to start the year, man, that'll be something else. Like, to make the roster, because I felt like he was a practice squad guy from the jump. Just looking at the guys that were already on this roster, but with the injury to Rondale Moore, that opened up potential opportunity for him. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I definitely have my eye on him.
Now, the week of activity here in Atlanta with roster moves and trades and all that stuff and player visits has overshadowed, a little bit of the debut of Michael Penix. We kind of rode that for about 48 hours after Friday. So, let's make this Locked On Penix here on
MPX,
the show.
baby. Let's go.
Yeah. And so what are you expecting from Michael Penix in his second game? Are you expecting it to be an improvement of what we saw in that first action against Miami? Are you expecting to see more or less of him this week? And does that, potentially open the door for him, to take a step back or whatever, going up against a Baltimore defense? I don't think Baltimore is going to play their starters or anything like that, but, Baltimore is known for having a pretty deep defensive roster. So I'm sure their backups will be more than enough to handle for Michael Penix and company. So what are your expectations for Michael Penix heading into the second preseason action?
I mean, to continue to this show why he was that 8th overall pick, and when you think about the type of guy that he is, just from a quarterback standpoint, he's a processor, right? And you even after the game, he was talking about, like, yeah, man, outside of that one little throw on that out route, oh man, I wish I could take that one back. You understand, like, he's even trying to correct things on the fly. That's one thing that I was fascinated by with Chris Lindstrom when I first saw him in training camp. It was one particular play where Rashid Hageman had beat him super clean on a swim move right off the line. Boom. It was so cool. I was like, oh my gosh. I'm like, oh, Rashid Hageman. Oh my gosh, what is going on? And then the next play, Rashid Hageman lined up on him again. Tried to do the same thing. Chris Lister came over him up, got his foot around there, put those two jumper cables right up in his chest and kind of stood Rashid Hageman up like this. I was just like, yeah, he's going to be a good one. Because when you're able to correct your mistakes on the fly and not have to wait till Monday, to watch it on film and coach to get on you about it, those are the type of guys that will last very long in the NFL. So that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for him to see how he can correct, some of the mistakes he had last week against Miami, because we know he was a little errant on a couple throws, to start off, and then he finally started to settle himself in. So that's what I'm looking for him to kind of correct those mistakes that he made, that he made last week. And I'm sure they've gone over it, time and time again, because the guy is a workman. So that's my main thing for him, to just kind of come out firing, man. Make him take you out, because you're like, oh my gosh, that first drive, 6-7 play drive, 75 yards for a touchdown, to whoever is in the game. In case you watched it, we're gonna continue that trend. So yeah, if he's out of there after that first drive, that means he did exactly what he needed to do, and then they're gonna move on to Taylor Heineken, Paddock, all that, whatever the other stuff is behind him.
But you don't enjoy watching third and fourth string quarterbacks in the preseason, Joe?
I do not. I don't.
Okay. Yeah,
I like watching third and fourth string defensive tackles and defensive ends. I like that. I can get pause. Yeah. But yeah, I don't care for bad quarterback play, dude. I'm done with it. I'm done with bad quarterback play.
Fair enough.
Like when I see good quarterback play, I don't want to see bad. I don't. I really don't.
Okay. Well, speaking of third and fourth string D linemen, who anybody you got your eye on in this Ravens game that you're hoping to step up?
Yeah, I put an APB out on Ruka Roro after on the Falcons postcast. So that's one. I want to see a little bit more of Brandon Dorlus. I want to see kind of let's get this thing going, man. Like let's show something. Big Zion Lowe. I want to see if he can get some going at that nose spot. I like some of the things that I was seeing from him down there in the trenches. So yeah, those that young defensive line core is pretty good. Is where I'm going to be at. And I know this your guy. You call for him and Kentavious Street. I probably won't see him that much, I don't think, because I feel like he's pretty much earned a roster spot, not guaranteed, obviously, but I feel like he's going to be one in the number somewhere down there. But yeah, I think it's going to be that defensive line group is going to be interesting to watch, because there are a lot of guys that are vying for not enough spots, and I absolutely love it. I want to see who's going to come out on top, and how many defensive linemen the Falcons are going to keep, because 8, 9, which one's going to be? We'll see.
Yeah, to me, one of the things that I think is going to be fascinating this week to see if it changes because of the injuries last week. Are we going to see some of those guys that like a Clark Phillips, like a Zach Harrison? Are those guys going to play even at all? Where it's like Raheem's going to be like,
man,
I don't need to be putting guys that I know are going to be on my roster at risk. So let's sit these guys, a Storm Norton, someone like that.
Right.
Michael Penix is going to play because he needs the reps, but outside of really him and a couple of these rookies, like who of those like second, third year guys, those veteran guys like a Eddie Goldman, like a Kentavious Street, are they going to sit this week? And what does that, and to me, that's going to be a real strong indicator that these guys pretty much locked up a roster spot, and we don't have to necessarily worry about that. And so, especially as you're talking about on the D line, like who is that guy that is Kentavious Street inactive this week? And that to me is telling you they plan on keeping him. Is Eddie Goldman inactive this week? That's telling you that they plan on keeping him. Those types of things. So that to me is something to be on the lookout when we get to Saturday morning. And we see that laundry list of players, right? I think Miami kept 40 guys out, like half their roster out last week. And it's just
these all they gonna make it. Y'all go ahead, y'all do y'all thing out there. What?
And like the Falcons, I think their official number was like 26 or whatever. And I'm wondering if that number goes up this week when we get to how many guys. And I know a couple of people are dealing with some injuries, so I do think that number will go up this week. But it'll be interesting to sort of see who exactly is on that list.
Is Kevin King going to be out there?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So that to me is the thing that I will have my eye on in the morning when we get that list of players inactive on Saturday morning. And then obviously I want to see Michael Penix. I want to see, as you say, these rookies, especially on the D-line. If some of these guys, I thought a lot of the rookies were just kind of okay, in that first game outside of Penix. And it's like I want to see a little bit more flash, a little bit more pop from some of these guys. Go, I don't need you to be dominant every rep, but just go make a play. And so that we can be talking about you on the post, guys. We're like, ooh, did you see what Rook did when he knifed through that backfield to get that tackle for loss? Did you see that sort of back shoulder grab that Casey Washington made? That sort of thing. So those are the things I'm really looking forward. But we will be back on Saturday with a postcast. Myself, Jarvis, and maybe Tenitra feels like she's gonna hang out with us. We never know.
Superstar join us. We'll see, man. You know how they are, man.
Check us out, Locked On Sports Atlanta, for that postcast. Of course, it'll be in your audio feeds here on Locked On Falcons, and of course, we'll give you a full recap here on Locked On Falcons after that postcast, immediately after that final whistle, later on Saturday. So go check it out. If you're more interested in Matthew Judon and you want to get some film breakdown of him, I'm planning on putting out a film breakdown of his film from 2023 for the Locked On Falcons Insiders this weekend. So if you want to sign up for that, go hit that link in the description below at joinsubtext.com/LockedOnFalcons. You can get that video for free. It's a 14-day free trial if you sign up, and then $4.99 a month thereafter, and you get access to all the film breakdowns that I've done throughout this offseason, even going back to last year. If you're interested in watching the All 22 from last year, you can go check that out. And of course, we'll be doing extended All 22 reviews later this season when the actual football games start. So look forward to that, guys. Check that out in the link in the description below. Make sure you check out Locked On Sports Atlanta. Check out Locked On Fantasy Football. So, guys, that was how yesterday's episode was supposed to end. Thanks to Jarvis Davis. We'll look forward to what we see on Saturday. And of course, we'll be back with a postcast and a Locked On Falcons rapid reaction. But there's still more to come on today's episode with Dalton Wasserman, co-host of the PFF College Football Show, to talk the Matt Judon trade, college football, the upcoming 2025 NFL Draft. So stay tuned, and we'll get into that as we continue today's Locked On Falcons. Right, in the NFL, training camp is all about finding the right professionals that are going to fit your 53-man team. And you're constantly, if you have a small business, looking for the right individuals that will fit your team, and you don't have to sweat it out in the Georgia Heat to do it. All you got to do is go to LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just any old job board. They're going to help you hire professionals that you can't find anywhere else, even those that aren't actively searching for a new job, but just might be open for that perfect role, like a Justin Simmons, like a Matt Judon. In any given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Man, you can do a lot in 24 hours. You can make big time trades in 24 hours. You can find a qualified candidate on LinkedIn in 24 hours. So hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn by posting your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back with another illustrious guest. He is Dalton Wasserman, a PFF analyst and the co-host of the PFF College Football Show. And he is here to join us to talk about the big news that just happened in Atlanta. Falcons making a trade on Wednesday night, sending a third-round pick in next year's draft to New England for outside linebacker Matt Judon. Dalton, any thoughts on this trade and what the Falcons are getting in Matt Judon?
It's absolutely an impact move for them, because as I was looking at the Falcons and what they've done this offseason, and they've done so many good things, the one big weakness that kept standing out to me is the pass rush, right? They were really good in run defense last year. We had them with, I believe, the second or third best run D grade. Coverage was getting better, and it should continue to get better under Raheem Morris with Jesse Bates and A.J. Terrell on the back end. But the pass rush was the big weakness. Now you have a guy who 2 years ago had the 8th most pressures in the league as your premier pass rusher, along with guys like Lorenzo Carter and Arnold Ebiketie. This is an impact move, and it really substantially improves the weakest part of this team. Now you look at them and you go, wow, they're a lot more well-rounded on defense. As long as Judon is healthy and obviously happy with his contract situation and all of that, this is one of the premier pass rushers in the league, and at a spot where the Falcons really needed it.
Well, I think as you put it, this was not necessarily a great pass rush. And you talk about it, pass rush was still a weakness, even though the Falcons had the most sacks last year that they've ever had in like 20 years. It was a big improvement just to get to that level. And then to sort of see them, seemingly let some of those veterans like Calais Campbell and Bud Dupree walk out the door and really just putting a lot of faith in their rookies to kind of fill in the gap in some of these young players. And obviously they had the season-ending injury to Braylon Trice the other night, sort of prompting this move. Does this sort of do you think this move of picking up Matt Judon gets this team from a bottom tier pass rush back to maybe like an average pass rush? Or do you feel like Matt Judon can make this unit even better than that?
Honestly, I think that's about what it does. It probably makes him an average or maybe a little bit better unit, depending again how he looks, because he didn't play hardly at all last year. So he's got to be healthy and kind of show you early in the season that he's in shape enough to do it. But it's certainly a lot better. We had the Falcons in the bottom 8 or so of pass rush grade last year as a team, and and it kind of speaks to, even though they got a lot of sacks, it wasn't consistent pressure on a down-to-down basis, right? But that's what Judon brings, right? And so good at like manipulating the offensive lineman stunts and things like that. He's really long, he's really athletic. Like everything that he did for New England, he can come over right away and do for Raheem Morris and the Falcons. Pardon me. It's such a, just to have that guy, right? Like every good pass rush team has that guy. It's Parsons, it's Garrett, it's Watt, it's Bosa, right? And Judon may not be in that class, but he's not far below it. I mean, there's several other teams where if you have one of those guys, like a B+ or an A- guy, and then a good crew around him, you create a really good unit. And that's what it's about, is getting pressure more often, right? If you're only getting pressure in a rate at, let's say, the low to mid 20s, it's not good enough. If you can get that up closer to in the 30s or even closer to 40%, now you're talking about a really good unit, but you have to do it on a down-to-down basis, and that's what Judon does.
Absolutely. And guys, if you're interested in getting more insight into, PFF's grades and whatnot for the upcoming season, they are having a preseason flash sale, annual flash sale for PFF Plus, access premium stats and PFF grades for the NFL and NCAA all season long. Plus, you can unlock fantasy tools and premium content from PFF writers like friend of the show, Trevor Sikkema. Use code PFF25 at checkout for 25% off your purchase. Join PFF Plus today. So, Dalton, as you are the co-host of the PFF College Football Show, we've had Max Chadwick on previously this offseason, kind of looking ahead to the 2025 draft. I can't help but look ahead to the 2025 draft because, Falcons give up a third-round pick, whatever that is going to be used on, no longer is an option. But I'm still thinking, like, as we're discussing it, yes, Matt Judon is a big step in the right direction for the Falcons. But if they're going to really make strides in terms of building up a great pass rush, they're going to need to get younger. Their premier guys are all, over the age of 30. They've invested a lot of resources in it, but why not continue to invest more resources in it? And I just want to pick your brain on the 2025 draft class. I've heard a lot of great things about this upcoming edge class. Can you share any light into that unit, as well as maybe the interior D-line unit class coming up in 2025?
Yeah, defensive line, it might, we've seen it in past years, but it might be the best position group that we've got in next year's draft. Honestly, you look at the very top where we're looking at guys like James Pierce Jr., who's very much maybe even a more talented Dallas Turner, and there was a lot of talk about the Falcons taking Turner in this year's draft. Nick Scoreton really looks a lot like Jared Verse when he's on and he plays with violence. You got two guys at Ohio State, and Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau on the edge, who are both really, really good. It's a stacked edge class. And then you look on the inside. I don't know if the Falcons will be drafting high enough, if they win the division and all that, to take some of these interior guys, but there's some freaks at the top. Mason Graham from Michigan is an absolute monster. He's currently the number one player on Trevor Sikkema's big board. Deion Walker from Kentucky's an absolute monster at 6'6". Last year played at 350, 360, and led the nation in pressures. He's a monster of a pass rusher inside. Then you still have guys like Aeneas Peebles, Howard Cross from Notre Dame, Riley Mills also from Notre Dame. Defensive line is a really deep group next year. And I think this draft next year really leans more towards the defensive side of the ball. The one position where that's not the case, and maybe you guys don't need this, is at running back. It's a special running back class coming too. But I think it's obviously, we're not going to see it like this year where a defensive player wasn't taken until 15th. There's a lot of really, really good players on the D-line and at cornerback as well.
Is it to the point, well, I think there'll probably be an offensive lineman or two, but is it to the point like last year, the flip of last year, where we might see a whole bunch of defensive players go in the top 10, 15, and just a smattering of offensive players in that top 15?
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, it's still, despite it being a potentially special running back class, I still don't think you see one taken in the top 15 with positional value. Now, maybe if one of them has a huge year, a 2,000-yard season, we saw it with Bijan Robinson, where he went, 8th overall. So I think there's only 2 receivers that I would throw in the first round for sure. Probably going to be still 4 or 5 offensive tackles because it's a premier position and there's some talented guys. But the biggest thing is just going to be, you're going to see it flipped where there's a lot of defensive guys at the top. You're not going to see 6 quarterbacks taken in the first 12 again, that's for sure. And honestly, if I were betting on whether it would be a quarterback or something else taken first overall, I really believe it would be an O-lineman or a defensive player. I just think it's a grittier draft than last year. It leans more on the defensive players. And that's not just because it's bad offensive talent. There's still some good offensive talent, but there's some special defensive talent that returned to college football this year. I haven't even mentioned Travis Hunter yet from Colorado, who knows which side he'll be playing or if he'll be playing both sides when he gets to the NFL. That's kind of a decision between him and coaches and agents and all sorts of things. But that's a special player too, who could go number 1 overall as well with a big season.
Well, and my last question for you, Dalton, since you do cover college football over at PFF, and for the Georgia fans that are watching this show right now, what do we think Georgia's going to do this year?
Honestly, I picked them to win the whole thing. I think the Georgia revenge tour is coming. There's no doubt in my mind they're a top 3 or 4 team. I think they should still win the SEC, although it's going to be very competitive with teams like Ole Miss, Alabama. Tennessee's kind of got an easier schedule. They could sneak up on people. It's a loaded conference, as it always is at the top. There's 6 or 7 teams that could compete for a playoff spot. Missouri's a very good one, but I think Georgia. I think they're going to come in really, really angry off of that Alabama loss last year, missing the 4-team playoff. When Kirby Smart talked about it, he felt they still deserved to get in, even despite that loss. But there was only so many spots. But now with 12, they're going to get in. I don't think there's any question they're one of the best teams in the country. And again, I picked them to win a national title. So I think they're incredibly well-rounded. They were really, really young last year, especially on defense. They didn't lose a whole lot. All those guys getting a year older. And, Kirby's the mastermind on defense. And Carson Beck is arguably the best quarterback in the country. He was so good last year in his first year starting. I expect him to get even better.
Yeah, I definitely do not want to be the team that has to play Georgia in the opening round of that new 12-team playoff. That's going to be ugly. But Dalton, I really appreciate your insight into not only the Matt Judon trade, but also the upcoming college football season and the upcoming NFL draft. Let the people know some of the stuff that you're working on and some of the stuff that you guys, Max and yourself, are going to be talking about on PFF College Football Show in the coming days and weeks.
Oh, absolutely. We've got a ton of written content and predictions coming out. I have a ranking coming out soon of all 70 Power 5 quarterbacks. I spent some time to watch all of them and put them all in order, in some order that people may or may not agree with. And then all year long, we're going to have just in-depth game previews and reviews, for that matter, on Sunday mornings, and game previews during the week of all the biggest games, including the first game, Georgia-Clemson, in a couple of weeks. So it's going to be a lot of fun previewing all the biggest games, reviewing all the biggest games, linking it to draft prospects, and just putting it all together all year.
Absolutely, guys. We got a couple more weeks for the NFL season to start, but college football is just around the corner. So go check out Dalton as well as the other great content over at PFF and the PFF College Football Show. And again, check out PFF Plus and use that promo code PFF25 at checkout to get 25% off your purchase. So, guys, that's going to do it for us here on today's Locked On Falcons. We'll be back tomorrow. Check out the postcast on Locked On Sports Atlanta. Check out the rapid reaction on Locked On Falcons. And then we'll be back on Sunday with more content, more great guests coming up this week. So continue to make Locked On Falcons your first listen. It's all part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.